It's recording, so
Awesome.
I'm going to hand it off to you.
Awesome. Welcome to the January 14th or 15th version of the Conformance Office Hours meeting. I'm Hippie Hacker, and I do note that all of us here need to conform to the Code of Conduct, and basically means play nice. I'll share my screen as we go through the meeting notes. And I'll pop that over here. Which one would that be? It's going to be this one here. So I didn't quite do what I expected there. Give me a second to resize the screen. All right, and that should show the meeting notes. I'm going to go down to today, and I didn't go through any AIs for last meeting, mainly focusing on what's up and coming. We'll go through several different areas. One is API Snoop, and API Snoop is used to provide us a metric and also going to provide us a blocking job. So we'll go over the API Snoop information. And then a little bit later, we'll be going through test writing review, which is our PRs that are in the on the board. And I put some notes here just to kind of have where we are overall. And then we have a test writing review merges. These are things that have made it all the way through. And then at the end goal here is to promote things to conformance. So other than that, is there anything else anybody wanted to add to the agenda before we start? Awesome. First off, on API Snoop, API Snoop seems to be several different things. And one of the things it is that place where we can send links to folks and say, here's the coverage that's available on apisnoop.cncf.io. I'd like to kind of have a feature close on that so we can refocus and double down the efforts on other things like the blocking job and supporting test writing. So I wanted to kind of get a consensus on this last set of features for the web cncf.io portion. Continuous and automatic updates of coverage on the homepage, so we can see features, or I see the as we get more PRs, having them automatically show up, and also making a decision to go ahead and show the last 3 months for the job, because that's all we have as far as the data that's available dynamically from Prow. And then we can still get to the oldest supported release because there'll be a Prow job running for that release. So that'll get us back to, I believe, 1.5 years. If that's not okay, then we need to find some way to look farther in the past on an ongoing basis. I think it's sometimes useful for presentations. I don't know that it's useful on an ongoing basis, and I don't want to spend too much more effort other than what we've listed there.
I think it is useful for historical context to make sure that if that data ends up aging out of GCS, that you can copy it and archive it somewhere. I don't believe that, so you're relying on the 90-day retention of our GCS buckets. But I don't think that relying on that for the N-1th release job is gonna do what you expect it to. I may be wrong.
So my understanding on the N-X release jobs is that those are running the conformance tests that were right at that moment in time. And if we're running a test that the same job that says run the conformance, we should still have those historical numbers. And I think they reach back far enough for us to have a meaningful, are we progressing forward? We can have a couple, if we want to go all the way back to like 1.9, or because we don't have anything meaningful up until 1.12, to be honest. And we can, if we want to put in a job that verifies 1.12 once every 3 months, that's fine. It seems.
No, for me, it's just being able to reproduce the results. I feel like I personally have found that as API Snoop has evolved over time, it's difficult for me to like recompute the new results with the new API snoop using the data that I have. Like when I gave a presentation at Shanghai last year, I did so based off of a Git repo in my GitHub. And it's got like copies of the data that was pulled down from GCS because I figured it was all going to go away. So just being able to, for the time period that we've been working on conformance, being able to show a consistent set of numbers. So if API snoop changes, being able to recompute those numbers, right? Anyway, I think I'm derailing. I'm just raising the point that archiving off data would be useful because I know there is some interest or intent by people to like explicitly name jobs after the release that they're testing instead of being N-1 jobs. So you may lose that ability. That's all I'm trying to say.
That's fine. I think that brings up another question, which I'll add. For what we're wanting to monitor, what are what are the jobs we want to use? If right now we're talking about using like moving to kind, but I don't know which job we should use. And if we're looking for the N-1 jobs and they progress into something else, into something new, I think it's okay for a consistency if we define those jobs and look at those numbers. And as far as I'm in pulling the job history up and having consistency looking back, I think we're at a point now where we've been previously manually looking and parsing JSON data and having a different approach to the various ways, but now it's all just query, like loaded into, for example, into Postgres directly and GraphQL directly. And I think that the way that we query might change over time. But I think a metric should apply to how we measure it.
I don't want to throw you off too much here. I think maybe what we are all collectively more interested in is how can we get new updates of the report today? Because as I look at API Snoop's website, the data that I see comes from December 1st, 2019. And as you know, we have somebody here working on conformance tests that are generated from behaviors. We'd love to see how things improve with newer reports.
Yeah.
So our top priority would be the coverage over time and automatically updating the report that's shown on the website.
We're hoping to get soon to the point where what we've got working now, when you just deploy API Snoop, it goes and pulls the latest release that day as far as what's on the front page. We just haven't switched that over to be what's on APISnoop.io right now. And so that's why I'm trying to get to the point of closing out that development until it is what's on the front page.
Okay.
Do we have any thoughts on the jobs we want to use? We can.
What's wrong? So we use the GCE jobs right now. What's wrong with continuing to use that?
I'm fine with that. I've had a lot of people asking if we want to switch over to the kind. By many, I say 4.
That's sure. Sure, I'm fine suggesting we use the kind jobs and
Trying to find the right jobs.
The jobs that include serial, I think. Or whatever.
Eventually, right, and I hate using that word because it's been so long. Eventually, we want to have some sort of profiles, right, and some sort of conformance around these optional features that may not be supported in kind. So, like, suppose we agree there's a cloud provider profile, and that's going to include, you know, a number of other like cloud load balancer support type of things, or PV. Well, I guess maybe kind supports that. I don't know. There may be things that aren't supported, so it makes sense to use kind, I suppose. But like, I don't think we need to be. We're going to run into where that things aren't supported there eventually. So I don't know what the effort level involved in here is in transitioning and what the benefit is. So
what I hear overall between the people on the call is that it's there's not a big need to switch out the job. There's not a benefit there.
I mean, like I recognize that you use kind locally for development, and that's a much faster round trip thing. And so it'd be great if whatever it is you compute with kind locally is the same thing that you see remotely with jobs that run on GCP. But I kind of feel like I guess I agree with John. I feel like we have more potential flexibility to move into other profiles and stuff.
Okay.
We continue to rely on the GCE job.
So we'll continue to use the current. It's not release blocking anymore, by the way. It's release informing. So that was the other problem or
It is release blocking.
job we're using.
It's back to release blocking.
Okay, cool. I didn't see that change.
But what we're talking about here isn't like the non-conformance job. We're talking about the conformance job, right?
I don't think we use the conformance job. We use, let me go see API Snoop and the job will
Okay, yeah, you're right. We use the use that job.
Okay, well, then let's leave it be. It allows us to do those promote tests that are there. There's a bit of a facelift that we're trying to do for user experience, just to shine things up. And maybe by next week, we'll kind of look at that, but hopefully close it up within the next few cycles. Because our focus, we want to switch it over to the blocking job this quarter.
Right.
And so that's basically a quick update for API Snoop, the web interface. This is what's up and coming to close out. If there's anything else we're missing or think we want, this is, I want to kind of just put it in the queue, but so we do get to an end, like a stop until we need more features rather than trying to add things that we feel are useful. I just want to get direct asks from the community on that anything we're adding extra to the API Snoop IO web interface is adding useful things. Otherwise, we're going to focus on the way most of the community will interact with it, which is via the Proud Job.
Okay.
The next part is our test writing review portion. We can go through the board for these, but I've kind of summarized it here so we can quickly go through it. This create new cube pilot deletion test is currently closed, but we need to kind of decide what we're going to do here. Back out, make it not so large.
What was the purpose of creating this test? Like the reason we said not to do it was because it looked like it was exercising performance criteria, and we don't think that performance criteria are a valid conformance thing, right? It was not clear to me whether or not this test was written to exercise some other endpoint or something.
are we testing this deletion somewhere else? Is I think Aaron's point. If it's already covered, then we don't really need.
Yeah, I am. Give me a
Right.
second to close these out so I can open that.
I don't know that we need to dive too more deeply. I just think what I'm recommending is that, yeah, was this test written to try and cover pod deletion? If so, let's find another place or way to exercise that. Because doing it in a performance-oriented fashion is not appropriate for conformance.
That's an AI on that one. On the next one, the squash and CLA has been resolved. So hopefully this is ready for LGTM. We'll see if all the tests have.
I think I saw an email recently. It's like still a lot of failures. I don't know if those are flakes or what's going on.
They're failing really quick, and a couple of them are getting some flakes on as well. So squash, CLA issues with resolved, lots of failing. Our AI here is lots of failing tests, and they're all failing at the same time. It actually feels like something's.
I mean, the Basel build test is failing. That's not a.
All right, I haven't. We'll look at that one.
There's severe breakage or infrastructure issues.
Right. And it seems like this was destined to get reviewed by Bowie. I don't know that he's ever actually taken a look at it.
I can review that too. That's not a problem. Bowie, Bowei, but BOW. It's like David Bowie, but EI instead of IE.
Yeah.
Well, I think I asked it to be written, so if we want to go on the principle of somebody else should review it.
Okay, that's fine. We'll try to get that reviewed.
It's not that big of a deal, right? It's start using field instead of an annotation. So
yeah, that's fine. I was just trying to suggest that I don't think somebody with subject matter expertise has taken a look at it. That's all.
Oh yeah, I think I've looked at it. I think it was fine.
Okay.
So we'll put that as. I'm just going to bold the AIs for us to follow up later. The next one is a +5 in coverage, and again we're having some issues with these not passing. So we'll go look real quick at the.
What's the status, Aaron, of all that deflaking? I know you guys were doing a ton of good stuff, but is that what we're seeing?
We're still trying to chase down these flakes as they come up. There are a lot of them. We may want to discuss revisiting putting retries back on, but the biggest cause of flakes, unfortunately, is something that's coming down from RunC, and we're kind of at the mercy of when we can get that pulled downstream and then get the appropriate things updated local in Kubernetes, right?
That's the one Jordan fixed?
Right.
Yeah.
And that seems like that's an O weeks thing, not an O days thing.
Yeah, definitely is a pain felt.
That looks like a complete just build failure there. So somebody checked something in that is bad.
Yeah.
All right. We'll visit those build fails. I've structured these, and I think it's been working well. When we have an issue to talk about the test to be written, and we review that in the meeting, and then we separately, when it gets approved in this meeting, then we go write a test for it until we have more like the behavior style running. So this was the issue, and then we said that was okay. It got moved to in progress last 9 days ago. We're currently sitting at create priority class name, and
the one thing I wanted to bring up at this meeting with John present was we're testing a lot about like event CRUD, right? Making sure that we can exercise the event API and we can get data out of it. The conformance requirements have an awful lot about like, we're not allowed to promote tests that rely on events for conformance. And And so I get that this isn't a test that relies on like a specific component of Kubernetes firing off a specific event at a certain point in time. This is using a completely fake event generated by itself. So I think that makes sense. But there's this line about like, we don't guarantee event delivery. And so conceivably this test could fail under a highly loaded cluster. I mean, I mostly feel like it's okay to allow this test through to eventually get promoted to conformance because it is sort of entirely synthetic and just making sure that the API can be exercised and it actually persists data. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on that as well.
No, I agree with you there. I mean, and I think that, okay, we don't guarantee event delivery, but I mean, one, is that actually true in practice? I mean, I know we put events in a separate etcd cluster, and I guess if there were some failure there, we would be in a degraded state, not a completely failed state, maybe. But realistically, like, I'm speculating here. You're taking notes. But like, realistically, it's a bad idea to run a bunch of conformance tests on a cluster that's so heavily loaded that it can't deliver events.
Right.
I think we're going to get other failures because we're not going to schedule pods. There's all kinds of crap that's going to go wrong. Like, I agree with you. That's kind of what it comes down to.
Okay.
Yeah. The intent of that, as I understand it, is, yeah, we're not going to rely on specific events because they're not, we don't have API, we don't have guarantees, versioning guarantees on those or anything, right? So like from cycle to cycle, we might emit different events.
Can I understand clearly where that definition of we shouldn't depend on specific events is in the conformance definition? Because I just want to really make sure, because I didn't.
It's in the. It's
I linked it in there. I commented.
I read that document a lot.
Pretty sure it's there.
Yeah, I linked it. It's under the heading conformance test requirements, and I linked to it in my PR review on that PR.
All right, we'll go back and look at that.
Just search for the word event, like once you get in there.
And maybe we need to clarify that documentation.
Yeah, I can take an AI to clarify that,
okay,
to make room for this test.
It's not, I don't find it exact, but I'll mark that.
Sure.
The next one that we did was priority class name test. So this was the one of the ones that was based on our pod spec work before we backed off and went back to endpoint coverage. So this was the approval that we should do the work, and then this is the PR itself. So let's go see.
So where I feel like this test is trying to do too much if it's bumping up against Wang Wei saying that it looks like this test is also trying to exercise preemption. And if that's the case, there's another test tagged as preemption execution path, which does this a lot better. So
do we want to promote that test instead at the recommendation of Wang Wei?
I feel like there is work underway to try and do that. The issue is I believe that test is also flaky. But I think that's the issue you have linked down below called promote pod preemption verification. Let me just double check.
Back to the promote prod preemption. Those have become flaky, and the chunking test has become flaky.
Yeah, you've already got it's number 83378.
Okay. And so we'll this is our humble replacement is number 83278 below. So we'll go ahead and close this entire set, or do we? Because I feel like I don't want to go down the pod spec route again until we're either doing stuff with
So again, I'm sort of asking a question like, why was this test written? It seems like it was written to sort of exercise the priority
Totally.
class CRUD
It was written
API, but then it also
because we there was it's at the top of the document actually.
Well, so I guess the question would be like, did we just didn't know there was already a test that did it? Somehow we missed that there was a test covering this, because they must use this same. How do they configure it in that test below? They must use that field, presumably. And so somehow we just missed that there was already a test. Is that what happened?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. Bobby, do you? Or sorry, Bobby. Caleb, do you know? This is from October, so I'm trying to refresh my brain about it.
Yeah.
Is my mic working?
can hear you.
Why did we write this one? What was the?
Yeah, that was a while ago. I'm just gonna go over to the issue and just double check.
Sure.
We can make this as an AI if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll move this up now that we know this is kind of the another like same level issue here. Because we were trying to promote this instead.
I mean, I think that it's not really, I don't particularly care about what happened. What I would just care about, one is, people like, if people just didn't know it was there, that's fine. But like, is there something actually different being tested? And if so, then we probably want to look at that. But otherwise,
The reason for the whole avenue was when we looked to create priority class name test, there was nothing hitting it back here. And so we decided to write something that
right, that may indicate that our whatever discovery mechanism we were using to find out whether something was hitting it wasn't correct, right? And maybe that's been fixed now, but it might indicate a bug in that analysis.
There was a fix to the way we were gathering data in the client and client Go. And I think that was fixed some time ago. And it may be during that time that was one of the tests that slipped through, if I were to guess. We can verify that, but I think we're capturing everything now.
Okay.
I mean, like, yeah, figure out why this test was written and then understand if the other test we're trying to promote, fulfills that reason. Sounds like the idea. But like, I know we don't want to just like CRUD a data type and hooray, data persists. If the resource is something that like affects change within the system, we need to verify that that change also occurs. And so here, I can totally see how we wanted to write a test that CRUD's priority class, but then it also like exercises the functionality of the newly created priority class. And so if that other preempt, and to me, it's unclear whether exercising preemption is taking that too far. Like if there's some other way we could exercise the priority class to make sure, yep, it's a priority class.
Yeah,
or it could be that preemption test is the minimal set of ways of exercising a priority class.
But I would be happy if the other test aforementioned is promoted. That would be probably sufficient to exercise the functionality which we need to have in conformance once it's worked out to be not flaky anymore.
I think Aaron's question was, is there some smaller set of functionality that we would want to exercise above and beyond? Like, is there a place for two tests here? One smaller minimal set and then the whole preemption path. But yeah, I mean, in principle, ideally you test the minimum and then you test the bigger thing, but
right.
We can try and be pragmatic too.
Do we want to add some, because we've had an area where we try to focus on an endpoint, and then for our promotions, it was considered that endpoint was hit accidentally, and so a little more Rube Goldberg. And so we've pulled back on that to focus just on pretty much on CRUD. Say, can we create this and do a minimal check? But most of the things we've been looking at, the minimal thing is to make sure that that exists, because what it gets used for, like, I'd love to flesh that out a little bit as far as a requirement for.
So I think we need to do what Aaron said and test for the change that's supposed to be affected on the system. Just CRUD's not good enough, right? So.
Well, for example, like if we go through the ones we've already promoted and merged real fast, do these meet that same requirement, or did they get merged accidentally because we didn't test that? Just real quick, here's our first one.
I thought this fulfilled the criteria just fine.
Okay.
Changing a secret that's in the system, is that what that's doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's patch
And
a
it
secret.
verified that the change actually took effect, and then it verified that it could select the secret via that new data. So
Okay.
that seemed totally fine.
That's all the secret does, right? It just stores stuff encrypted. So.
Which, yeah, I guess I just want to make sure that maybe we just accidentally hit cruddy ones.
Yeah, I mean,
my rule of thumb is, can I pass your test if I use a service that does nothing but return 200 OK? If so, it's not a great test.
Right.
And these tests, to me, actually exercised the system in question.
Okay. We don't have to go through all of them then if you feel that is correct.
So we didn't, I think we skipped over a couple more of the open ones. I don't know if you wanted to finish.
Sorry, yeah, I did, didn't I? I meant to, tried to restructure this. I'm trying to pull this column back, but it doesn't seem to be moving over. There we go. Welcome to my editing. No, I won't go back any further. Anyway, so this was rewrite replica pod quote limit. So this was a rewrite. These are older things. The conversation point has gotten us to getting someone to review. I think maybe Devin, this might have been Devin's ticket. Devin has moved on to do other things, so we'll be taking over these tickets for Devin, or rewriting them. I think we're waiting for a review from Thomas.
It's unclear whether you actually have changed the test since he asked his last question on October 10th.
September, October. So October is signed. Let me say poke when he can approve. Where's the question? October 10th?
It was,
October 10th is just.
it was up above in review, where he says, I'm not sure what value is this case adding.
so it looks like that needs a tweak before.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. So we'll go back here, and one we'll reassign it internally. I'll send that to me. And let's go back here. The API has become flaky. And we'll go quickly check if that's a similar flaking due to home. This gets us to the bottom. They all failed really quick, so it feels like the same, just Basil build doesn't work. Is this the same flake that you're seeing elsewhere, Aaron, or is this something
Basil
specific?
build should not be flaking on you. I would really double check that you are able to compile the code and run it locally.
Okay.
Because I'm just looking at the history for the Basil build job, and it does fail, but it's not failing across the board.
Maybe rebase. How long ago were these rebased?
I rebased them like Where was the PR? I think I retested them today. Like
Oh,
where's the retest? It's not far back. 9 minutes ago.
no,
When you
rebased
solve them
though.
quickly like that, that almost always means there's a compilation error.
Yeah, it looked like there was. It was an
Where
import.
was the? We rebased here, so there must be something wrong with that compilation 44 minutes ago. So we'll go back.
I think I might have seen something when you were scrolling saying about an import for something types.
Okay.
So I've imported a types package into the test, which is required for some part, and that may have been where some failure was, but I'll have to have a look at that.
We can revisit compile errors offline.
Yeah.
So thanks for the rebases. On the next part, we went through 2 of these. We can go through that last one, but I'm happy to see those are total for another 5 points in coverage. Namespace patch was the last one. Let's see where we're at here.
Right.
They were.
So to just go back to like the API Snoop website, like I would like to understand how you could use the website to show the increased coverage because of these PRs being merged. I feel like I have lost the capacity to be able to generate a report like that.
I'm going to put that at the top of the features real quick. And can you repeat that again?
Well, I mean, continuous automatic updates might show that, right? If I can say today and then I can scroll back like a month or something.
If you can go back in time.
Yeah. I was hoping to find somewhere where we could get a list of PRs that are not yet merged or test, like or this is enough. Just if we have the over time, what was it 2 weeks ago? And we do it once a week, or we for the last 3 months.
Sure.
So that would give us, 12 moments to look at. Yeah, you're right. We don't have that drop down feature at the moment, just because we haven't loaded the jobs in there. We're trying to focus on the new release that just when it loads in all of the data from Sprout.
I just know, in like a month or so here, we're going to be a lot more interested in being able to prove progress from before and after. And so I can take your word for it that those PRs have in fact increased coverage, but I need something that shows that.
Sure. And these are just tests, new tests that have never been written.
Right.
These
They
now
haven't been promoted yet. I know. They need to like soak and prove that they're healthy, non-flaky tests.
Yeah.
Get it.
That will be forthcoming.
Yes.
And important for everybody to see. So that will affect test promotion down here. There was a split limit range test. I know that Aaron looked at that and commented on it. And there has been a lot of conversation. It sounds like we're ready just to resubmit as a promotion. I can dig into that if we want, but
So to recap, there was a test case that exercised a whole bunch of functionality of limit range by like creating it and then creating pods this way and creating pods that way and creating pods this other way and then updating the limit range and then creating it this other way. And I felt like, gee, that one test is doing an awful lot to describe a single behavior. But and so I suggested breaking it up so we had a behavior per test. But I think that in retrospect, perhaps we should try to find a way to ensure that we can validate multiple behaviors in a single test. Again, per like the cap that John submitted a while back.
It should support that, and
So I think the test as written was a great test.
No.
We should just promote it.
Okay.
And the presentation last week, this is kind of going back to that, where we went through Zach's deploying API Snoop into a cluster, and then going through and querying the list of tests that hit very few endpoints, and those endpoints are hit by very few other tests. So very focused tests that pretty much they're the only tests that hit those endpoints, to go through those and see if they're ready for promotion. We put that down on the list because promotions seem to be kind of iffy if we haven't written them.
Yeah.
But we will, as we move away from having Zach focused on the web UI front end to focusing on using the data to help us write tests, that shift will focus, the focus will shift.
Okay. I took a pass at rolling through all the PRs on the conformance board last week, and we've done some of that today, and I will do more of that today. But part of me feels like we have a lot of PRs in flight, and I'm actually a little confused about like where we're going with it. And so part of this is right, like lacking that continuous updated API snoop, so I can see the coverage going up. Like if I scroll way to the top of the document, you know, increasing pod spec field coverage was like one of the things we talked about from a behaviors perspective. So I'm just trying to understand, like, as we write these new tests, are we writing them to, you know, increase the core GA API endpoints? And if so, can we have a report that shows that we're going in the right direction there? And then are we writing tests to cover different fields in the pod spec? And if so, can we see that we're going in the right direction there? Like, maybe this is just me being a little out of sync with the meeting as of late, but
No, I think what's going on, well, my opinion, we focused on pod spec for a while. We're focusing on endpoints. We're still measuring by endpoint.
Okay.
And all the behavior stuff is taking a long time to move forward, not moving the way we'd like. So hopefully the idea behind that would be to get the kind of reports you're talking about and be able to see the coverage on that metric. But right now we're still using the measurement of endpoint coverage. And so I think that the focus recently has been on endpoint coverage. And I think that there's value in that still, right? So
yes.
Long-term direction, I still want to go with the behavior stuff. I just need to get back with Jeffrey, and he's sick today, unfortunately, but we wanted to have a full end-to-end machinery working with a handful of behaviors. I have to sync up with him. I was hoping to have that today. And then we can start filling out those lists of behaviors and build out the machine, like filling out the content once we have the machinery. But I don't want to approach SIGs or anything until I have the machinery and good examples working.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, if there's any way I can help out, let me know. I'd like to make sure he's unblocked.
Yeah, we're going to sync up later this week when he's back. He was, like I said, he's out sick today, but probably you can help. But I also will hopefully be able to give some attention to it this week.
All right, sounds great. Okay, but so what I will try to do to help in the interim is, like I said, I feel like having PRs authored by people back in August still hanging out on the board is driving me a little batty. So I'm just wondering if we can, so it sounds like PRs that were written by Devin need to be picked up by somebody else. who can I like ping or CC to make sure I'm getting the right people in the loop? You are muted, hippie.
Test writing crew right now is myself and Caleb, and we're looking to shift Zach into that as well. And we're
Okay.
also going to need to find probably someone to replace that.
All right.
For now, I'm picking up the slack.
That's appreciated. So then, like the conformance board also has just a lot of issues on it. It's unclear to me what we're doing with those. Pardon?
It may be some of the complexity coming from this approach that we took that I think went really well last week, and we haven't got to that point of we're writing mock test tickets, and the tickets go through our workflow of run API snoop, use some query to identify the endpoints we're going to focus on. For the documentation, find that for that particular endpoint, talk about the mock test, what we're going to do, write an example in really simple code, and then we actually use the way that we work to run that and verify that we did hit extra endpoints and that it will increase coverage here. And so we have more tests that we've written mocks for that will go through, and they're currently on the triage for the board. So if we go back to our board, is it GitHub org board 9 org Kubernetes project?
Yeah, I'm looking at the board. When I went through the board, I have not looked at any of the issues. I just looked at PRs because the issues are also kind of overwhelming in terms of what our plan of record is.
The reason I went through and we created the issues is that I wanted to get buy-off before we write the PR.
Okay.
And
so buy-off means it's been moved into sorted backlog?
That's right. So we don't work on it until it's in sorted backlog, and there needs to be an issue created that we walked through and said, this is going to increase coverage by this much. Here's documentation and an example. Do we agree that the example generally is valid for conformance and we want to write a test for it? So that it's all kind of upfront, whether we want to go through and prioritize writing that test over the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
That's kind of this is kind of what we, hopefully in the future, we'll go through this quicker, and the two triage will just say, do we want to pull these over into the backlog? So just getting back from the holidays, it's probably just a bit slow to crank them up. But I'm going to open these real quick. 1, 2, 3. We'll stop there. We'll do these 3. So this one is proposing a new test for list the namespaces. And if we go through and query the actual endpoints we're going to focus on, it's list and delete. There's docs. Here's the general test outline. And our test here.
I'd file this under the exact same bucket as doing something synthetic for a secret. Secrets and config maps are functionally exercised the same, so that sounds great. The key thing to keep in mind that we learned while writing the secret test is it is a bad idea to list all secrets with no label selector. The recommendation that was made for, like, just look at how the secret test was written and follow that. Like, apply a label to your config map, list all across all namespaces using that label selector, that sort of thing.
So what I normally do here is I'll go through and make a comment that we talked about it in the meeting.
Sure.
Approved for work on 14th January meeting. So we do that, and then I go back to the board, and we move it to this. Can someone else move it to the sort of backlog for me as we go through them?
Yeah, I got it.
Just drop it on top. And the next one is here's 2 more for core component statuses. I'll just kind of had a drop down basically down to the code on each one of these.
We said we didn't want to do component status at all.
Yeah, I saw a PR about this already.
We covered it in a previous meeting. We said that it shouldn't be conformance.
Did we miss that?
Yeah. It's up there too.
Sorry that I missed that.
A little further up, I said I don't think it should be conformance. So, and in
All right,
fact, it's going to be
so
deprecated.
if we say no to an endpoint, I want to document it why. And all right.
So here, there's two reasons. One is that I don't. Well, it's the plan is for it to be deprecated anyway. That's a good enough reason.
All right.
Functionally, I don't think we can expect specific components in any given distribution. It's not a workload portability API. Tool.
All right. I think we should probably have, because there's some of these things are all unique to the particular endpoint that we're deciding is not conformant. And then I don't know if we want to add that to the docs of conformance, or because it's okay for new things to have this nice definition on it, but for things that have been there for a long time, to say that we're not going to write conformance for them for various reasons.
Assign this issue to me, and I can update the conformance requirements to describe.
Thank you. Let's update the docs, the conformance docs.
To me, I never followed up on it.
Awesome. And this is great, even though, so this stopped us from writing that test.
You did actually open up a PR with the test, and we had the same discussion on that PR. Or somebody did. It's fine. We're eventually consistent here. We got to the same answer.
Core template, core v pod template test. Do we want to go through the pseudocode first? List templates, create a template, read a pod. This is one that said was going to be deprecated.
Well, pod templates, I don't think so. Pod, yeah, there was discussion of, hey, nobody uses this, let's deprecate it. Then we said, actually, no, there are people using it, but it's basically just a place for people to stash stuff away.
Yeah.
You know, this is sort of one of these things, like, I guess since it's in core, it's just an API, like it's there for everybody. But if somebody were to write their own API server, like I don't see a need for this to be part of conformance in the sense of like, it's a really,
okay.
I don't know what
it feels a squishy definition. I keep hitting.
Hey man, there's always judgment involved.
No, I'm not trying to judge. I'm just,
No. I'm saying there's judgment. Like it's not a strict criteria of like this is where it falls, right? Like, yeah. I guess the question is, if people are using it, it doesn't provide us. It doesn't. The discussion in the deprecation was actually people are using it, and it doesn't have a security or scalability issue. So therefore, we keep it. Then the question is, should it be part of conformance? And
if we're not deprecating it, I kind of feel like
so. Yeah, like,
or it's not deprecated. It's
people can build workflows based upon it, and then once those workflows are built,
and a couple other folks are using it.
So I think what would be helpful is wherever that discussion happened, we probably want to link to we decided not to deprecate.
There's a PR or an issue called deprecate on template, and that discussion is there. Yeah, let's link that. Yeah, I guess we should make it conformance. It's not.
Right, promote, and this was decided on. We got the date because I'm in here, right? So I'm going to comment on that one. If we could move that over to backlog.
Now, can you scroll up so I can see the test again? Just to now that
we said it's okay.
Just a basic CRUD test, I expect, because there's not.
So here's the outline.
Yeah. Okay. I guess that's fair. So what this lacks, but what I guess we would say we don't want to bother enabling is creating a pod from a pod template.
There's not like a controller that does that, right? I don't think there's any controller that consumes this. It's just people's client code that consumes it.
Yeah, they create it in order for them to retrieve it and then go back and use create pod.
Gotcha. Now I understand how this is used as a CRUD store. That's great.
Right. So
It is.
that's why we were like, oh, this is kind of useless. Like we made it, but we never actually, we never actually finished the functionality basically. But it was put in like, what did Brian say? Like, in issue, 50 or something ridiculous like that, right? Like, and so it's sort of like it's there and people use it. And so is that a sufficient reason to make it a conformance thing? Because the fact is, if anybody who's using the open source API server and not recreating the API server functionality gets it for free. You can make the same argument about component status. Component status is there and it's already there and everybody already has it. And so we're not going to exclude any existing distributions by saying it's required for conformance. But arguably, the spirit of conformance would say this is not truly important. You see what I'm saying?
The difference is I think we are on track to deprecate component status.
Yes. Yes. That is the difference here. And
I want to
in
honor
this, we're not going to, we explicitly are on track to not deprecate it. So, yeah. So the API needs to be.
we're at time, and I
Yeah,
don't
we're
want
not.
to keep anybody longer than we've allocated.
Yeah, I'm losing my room now. So I will see you all
Thank
later.
you, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
See you next 2 weeks.
All right.